to the Eye Test with Eric and Brady. We've got another fabulous guest today. We're going to talk about sports from a little bit different perspective with me as a photographer, Brady as a writer. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Eye Test. I'm Eric. This is Brady. We've got our guest with us today, what I consider one of the hardest gets to get nailed down for an interview. We got Clinton Childs here with us. He, for the 5 people in Nebraska that don't remember you, give us your history real quick.
Well, I'm born and raised Omaha, right here in Nebraska. Played down at the university during what everybody calls the glory years.
Right.
Played running back, played with some really good running backs at the time. Backed up Lawrence Phillips, starter for kickoff returns, some special teams, things like that. I don't know what else people want to know about me.
Well, we'll dive into a lot of that stuff here. On our podcast, we don't get into a lot of the daily, what I call the daily chatter on podcasts that go like every week, or it seems like some of them go every other day. It seems like these days, And then the radio shows, because we're a little bit like a magazine, and if we don't make it evergreen to stand on its own over time, then it just gets lost in the noise. We like to talk about some of the, what would you say, some of the intangibles, some of the
bigger picture stuff. Like
some of the bigger picture stuff, but also some of the underlying minutia of not just football. I mean, yeah, we use the context of Nebraska football all the time, but just as a framework of, we've talked a lot about physical. When Rob was on, we talked about a lot about physical contact, and when Steve was on, we talked about, developing toughness and grit, and how we get that kind of stuff out of kids. What are your thoughts on? Because the game's different than when we played.
Softer,
right? He said it.
It's a lot softer.
He said it. It is a lot softer game.
Yeah.
So how do we, as parents, as coaches, as people who influence these young men, if we're talking strictly about football, but it applies to other sports and even female sports, but how do we? Is there a path to returning to some of that toughness, or do we just have to accept that the game has changed and it's not going back?
Well, right now, I think you kind of have to accept the fact that the game, it has changed. It's a lot different than what it was 20 years ago. It's a lot different than what it was 30 years ago. And I think a lot of it has to do with, first of all, you have parents that are parenting a lot softer than, for, say, my age group, our age group when we were growing up, opposed to like what you have today.
Right.
And what you have today is you have a lot younger parents than what we did. So there's a lot of friendships, I would say.
Friendships with your kids?
Of parents that are, instead of, and I'm not saying that it's a horrible thing, because, those relationships can be, they can be great relationships, but I also feel like that tough love, like when you used to have the dad that sat in the basement that didn't have to speak much, and, mom pretty much handled everything. And then when dad spoke, you hear that he roars.
Wait till dad gets home was like the most scary thing you could ever hear.
So, I mean, as far as like the difference of the game today, you also have people that are leading these games and these different sports and organizations and things like that grew up either with a silver spoon in their mouth or didn't have to really work hard to get to places where they had to get to and where they've gotten to now.
Right.
So, when things are handed to you, we all know this, when things are handed to you and they're given to you, you don't appreciate it as much.
You value it less.
So if we can, I'm a firm believer, everything starts at home. And, the things that you do at home, the structure that you have, whatever it is that you're trying to get for your child.
Right.
And, doing your best, raising them the best that you can. But I also believe there has to be some tough love, and there's got to be some tough lessons that are taught. And I think a lot of people forget to, teach those tough lessons, because once you get out into the real world, yes, the real world is soft as well.
Right.
But, if you can teach your kids how to go through adversity and understand that there are going to be some failures, and continue to tell them that, everyone's fallen before.
Right. It's not if you get knocked down. It's
how many times you're willing to get up.
Yep.
So you got to be willing to get up quite a bit. And as long as you know that being knocked down is okay, as long as you come back from that knockdown.
Yep. And learn something from it, hopefully, so that it doesn't happen again.
Well, if you get knocked down again, you got to get up again. So, there was a saying in my family, some people don't believe the fat meat is greasy. Well, guess what? If you want to continue to do the same kind of things and you're getting in trouble or doing those same type of things, or you're not finding the successes that you're looking for, then you need to figure out a way to get it done.
Right. Well, as you were talking, I was thinking, the thought occurred to me that, you hear all the coaches talking about, they're saying they want to be the most physical team, out there. Everybody says that. But in this game that's changed, how do we do that? How do you guys do that as coaches? How are you going to be more physical in a game that's
restricted so much,
restricted and gotten a little soft?
Well, I think one of the big things is, especially like coaching high school aged athletes, first of all, you have to have a parent meeting. And in the parent meeting, you have to, try to gain some of that trust in the conversation that you have. Let these parents know, hey, I am going to be tough on your child, male or female. I'm going to be tough on them. I'm going to try to get everything out of them that I possibly can. I use profanity quite a bit. And I explain to parents in every parent meeting that I have, I will never put your child down. I will never cuss at your child to belittle them. But there may be some language.
You might need to get their attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's nothing that I would ever do to, try to hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that. But that's why I explain that to the parents right away, so they know exactly what they're getting.
Yeah.
So in those parent meetings, I leave them with a lot of different things to where, either you can come to watch me coach. You can also come and watch me how I'll pat your child on the back and tell them good job when they do a good job as well. But it's nothing personal. If I get on your kid's case, it's just trying to teach them some of the lessons that I grew up with, because I know that the lessons that I grew up with are the ones that, also helped me become who I am today and who I was 20, 30 something years ago, right? And when you learn those lessons, it kind of makes life a little easier, because you kind of understand that there are going to be some failures. There are going to be things that, you have shortcomings, and not everything's going to be perfect.
Right.
But as long as you're able to hold your chin up and you're able to battle through whatever it is, which is, one of the big things, I always try to teach like sports, but I want it to be a life lesson. I want you to be able to learn something
100%.
that you're going to be able to pull from this and become the best that you can possibly.
You used that term earlier that's been sticking in my brain as I've been listening, that tough love, right? And I just think that's everything, and it's got to be both words, right? It's not just tough or love. It's not an
Absolutely.
either or. It's both.
Right.
Right. And, you know, I coached some sports over the years too, and I was the same way. It was like, it's going to be tough love. Right. I'm good. I will be the first one to kick him in the butt, but I'll also be the first one off the bucket. Right. And meet him at the chalk line to give him a hug or high five when the time, you know, when it's worthy.
Absolutely.
And I never handed out my kid's sitting over there. He'll be the first one to tell you I don't hand out false praise.
Right.
Right. You got to earn it that way. When you do get the smallest praise, it means a lot.
Right. And even today, you talk about participation trophies, participation medals, participation ribbons. Like those things weren't given out.
Well, hey, why you remember that last year you played baseball, and we had we were in the end of the year tournament, and we wound up finishing second place, and we just walked away. We didn't even want the second place trophy.
Yeah.
I asked everybody. I said, "Do we even want this trophy?" And the whole team, I was like so proud of them. The whole team said, "Hell no." And we just packed up our shit and walked away.
I understand that part. I do. But
Right?
if I'm going to work my ass off and I end up second place, you damn right I'm taking that shit home.
Right. Well, there were some other things that played with the team they were playing that we didn't like respect the way they played the game.
There you go.
Right? Because we didn't feel like they were respecting the game. I could care less if you disrespect me, but you don't disrespect the game.
Kids or the game. Yeah.
Right. And so we just packed up our stuff and went home because we were there to win it.
Absolutely. I wouldn't care if it was a spitting contest. I'm in it to win it.
Yeah, and then that's the one thing, right? How many guys have we had on from the 90s? And I love hearing the stories about how you guys competed at everything.
Everything.
If
Everything
it was bowling, if it was cards, if it, like you said, if it was a spitting contest, the whole, like, there were 7 guys lined up that were spitting to see who could spit the farthest.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I just think that it teaches you how to compete.
I'm 100%. I don't think this next generation was taught to compete and to hate losing more than you like winning.
That is my concept, right?
That
there.
is 100%.
That is my concept, right?
And
there.
you know where I went to high school. We lost. If we won 3 games a year, we had a good year, and I still hated losing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
And it's just funny, but it boils back to the world is soft.
Right.
You got people that are in position that.
I just got one more thing I wanted to touch on, and then we're gonna remember that Brady's here because he's got things he wants to ask too.
Okay,
he's just like caught in the middle here.
I'm fine,
but I'm really like focusing in on this concept that, and we might be doing more with it. We'll see what happens. But this concept of the importance of building better young men, specifically young men, because I think there's been a whole generation of young men that have kind of been lost, and they haven't. In some ways, they've been told that their masculinity is wrong, and so they've internalized it and not willing to express it anymore.
Where exactly are you going with that?
No.
Masculinity. We talking about something like.
No, we're talking. No. We're talking about this whole. This whole concept of like toxic masculinity. Right. And I think there's a generation of young men here who their masculinity has been lost because if they didn't have a father at home to teach it to them, and now they have portions of society telling them they're flawed because they like to fight or they like to compete.
Well,
right. That it's important that I think we need to get back to focusing on building better young men.
Yeah.
Because I think the world's going to need them.
Absolutely. My everyday job, I deal with young men and young women. And, one of the big things is that I talk to them about is being able to carry yourself with a lot of pride.
Yeah.
And no matter, what your shape, no matter what your height, no matter what your skin color, no matter what, even if you want to express yourself by dyeing your hair a certain kind of color.
Right.
Like be confident in who you are. And I think that, it's easy to get into a classroom and you have a lesson plan, right? Because you have everything marked out and what you're going to do. But this isn't teaching life lessons. This is teaching what this subject is about in this classroom.
Right.
And I think that, there's enough programs, probably not enough programs, but there are programs out there to where kids can go to your boys and girls clubs and, girls inks and things like that, to where, these young men and young women can get some structure while they're not in school. But I also feel like these are things to where these young men and young women today, they need someone to teach them how a young lady should carry herself, how a young man should carry himself, and what the difference is between male and female as far as what you're going to do and what your sights are. You have to get out and you got to work and you got to work your ass off. And when you're out there doing it, make sure that you hold your chin high, no matter what it is that you choose to be or whatever it is that you choose or how you choose to act. At the end of the day, you have to have confidence in whatever it is that you're trying to do, because if you don't carry that confidence, I listen to a lot of just motivational speeches and stuff like that. And one of the big things that I'm hearing a lot of is the ones that are failing the most are the ones that aren't preparing the most. And if you're going into something with a lack of self-confidence, it's because you didn't prepare, and you know that you didn't prepare. So if you know you didn't prepare and you get ready to step on the playing field, or if you get ready to go apply for this job, and you want to sit down and talk to somebody of a Fortune 500 company or whatever it is that you might want to, but the qualifications might be there, but that doesn't mean that you're confident enough to sit down and be able to speak with whomever it is that's in that room. Ray Lewis said it best. He was like, one of the big things that you have to do as far as getting respect, and that is to give respect. And the person that walks into that room is 9 times out of 10 the person that people are going to be looking at, and they're going to want to give that person their respect just because of the way that person carried themselves into that room.
Right.
You demand respect in the way that you carry yourself.
Yeah, I talk to my boys all the time about something that I saw years ago, and it always stuck me, was that the alpha in the room never has to tell anybody he's the alpha.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Everybody just knows.
Yep. I had a wrestling coach in high school.
You had a great wrestling coach in high school.
He's actually been inducted into the Hall of Fame. I just found out from Tommy Warren Sr. Yesterday at the grocery store that Curly's getting
nice. You had a great wrestling coach.
So if I can, shout out to Curly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, he has some great talent. He had a lot of.
You didn't want to wrestle anybody from North back in the day.
Yeah,
they were gonna be tough.
Yeah, they spoke about it though. I mean, even back then, this is what I'm talking about as far as men guiding young men.
Right.
You got Curly Alexander and my father, Herman Colvin. That's the closest thing to a dad that I ever had. That's my guy.
Yeah.
And those guys were, and I mimic a lot of things that I do with my coaching style, because there was plenty of tough love that I got from them. And I mean, I can still, at 49 years old, I can get a telephone call from Herman Colvin talking to me about certain things, and it's the same thing as it was when I was 15, 17
yes,
years
coach.
old. No, it's Pops. I don't dare call him coach anymore.
But you're right.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny you say that and how that sticks with you, right? I mean, up until my high school coach died a few years ago, anytime I would run, I'd be 45 years old and run into him, and it was still, yes, coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How you doing, coach? And everybody, shit.
It's impacting lives.
Right. And that's it's like the ultimate respect. And I didn't realize until I had coached for years, and I've got 26, 27-year-old men that will still hit me up online and say, hey, coach.
Absolutely.
I'm like, that's like the best compliment ever.
I'll tell you. And it's funny because, with coaching the last 26 years. And I'm kind of going into something.
Go ahead.
I mentioned earlier that there are people in positions to where things were handed to them, didn't have to work to get to where they're at. And yes, the qualifications on paper might be there, but then they seem to forget the people that are actually, coaching these young men, young women that are teaching them life lessons. And they forgot about those. And it's sad to see that, because somebody that has put so much time, effort, and has devoted away from their own family to give to other people's families and their children, and they not respect that, and they look elsewhere and think that they're going to get it elsewhere, it's sad to see what's happening when you don't have people that respect like what's being done with these young men and young women when you're coaching them in sports.
Right.
So I won't say any names, but I'm pretty sure if people hear this, they'll know who I'm talking about.
If you know kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, but that is that it just goes into kind of like what I'm talking about, though. Like, you have to, you got to. Tough love is always going to be a thing to where, you got to speak on it. It's just like you said, you could run into your old coach and it's, yes, coach. Happens all the time.
Same coach that made us run endless hills one day because, right? And and you mentioned that, like, how much of that coaching filtered into your own, and I think of that too. Like, I always, when I have my parent meetings, I would always say, we're not going to learn a lot of baseball the first 2 weeks because it's going to be discipline week, right? Yeah. We're going to learn my expectations. We're going to learn that I'm serious about my expectations.
Absolutely.
And there's going to be a lot of extra running and some push-ups and we'll try to get some baseball in there.
It's really cool to hear. It's really cool to hear the parents come back and tell you, thank you for what you did with my child.
Yeah. And
that is awesome.
Most of my parents stuck around.
That's awesome.
Well, and this might get a little too current Nebraska, so slow me down. Plus, I've been working on the yearbook stuff this summer.
Oh, right. So it's all on the top of your brain.
So but off the top, like Matt Rule has said with his whole coaching staff, kind of running with the theme, they're a comforting, not coddling environment in coaching. If you see them in practice, they are like intense and loud, and they're coaching details, and they're going to get after it, but they're not belittling even to college players. They're going to coach them up. They want the players to understand the standard, and they're going to coach them hard to adhere to the standard and elevate it. But there's no sense in making, a young man feel bad if he's having a bad day, or just, shoving him into the dirt in front of his teammates. That doesn't do anybody any good. So that came to mind. And then this won't be out for a couple weeks. So I've been working on my...
Don't date us too much.
Right. I've been working on my yearbook story. And my yearbook story involves the Texas ties. So I talked prominently to Garrett McGuire and Bob Wager. And Clinton, multiple things that you said brought me back to the story and writing about Bob Wager. His time at Arlington Martin, one of the players he coached happened to be Myles Garrett, future number 1 overall pick. And Bob Wager has a story that I think it was before Myles Garrett's sophomore year. He called a parent meeting and called Myles in with his parents. And you got a kid who's remarkably, athletic and talented at that point. You never really, and anytime you call in a parent for a meeting, you never really know how that's going to turn out.
Right.
And Bob said, Myles is clearly talented, clearly athletic, clearly driven, but the effort he's giving out versus the effort of his potential does not match right now.
Right.
He's got to elevate that and lift it up. And the way that Bob said it was like, there was kind of like that weight in the room after he said something. Myles' dad said, tell him the same thing. Like, I hear you loud and clear, coach. Like, we're going to get there, because I want my son to hit those spots. And obviously he got there. And also going along with that, Bob Wager coached at Arlington Martin, even when he took the job, and then now it's the way that school district lines up is lower on the socioeconomic end of even just the Arlington part, in like the south guess, southwest or southern Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs. And the way that he told the story was, they lost to Allen, biggest school district in Texas, by about 11 points back in September. And it just ate at him. And he texted Matt Rule, he was still with the Panthers at the time, and they were just close from his time at Baylor, and just texted, he's like, I just don't know. It felt like the moment was too big for us. Like it just felt like they got too tense and too tight and too anxious when they didn't need to be. They should be assured of themselves. They've worked hard to that point. They should go out with confidence. And he brought up, as Matt Rule is also big on studies, so they have that commonality, where there's a study where players with or fatherless homes are less apt to handle pressure in situations like that. So he reached out to Matt Rule and said, how is this going to happen? Or how do you deal with that? And Matt Rule, even at the time, called him right back and said, Bob, I'm dealing with the same thing here. Even at the NFL level, you got guys who just can't break through those moments. And it's a constant battle. It's a constant pressure of trying to embolden them and give them that confidence, give them that edge. And, Matt Rule and his whole staff, they love competition. They're living off of it. Why do you think they have spring ball the way that they do? And they brought in so many people. Like, it's competition breeds success, and it breeds further competition. But even to hear that, and so Clinton, if that resonates at all, or if I'm mumbling on, please let me know.
Did they find an answer?
But they just bonded over each other. And I mean, another underlying, again, spoiler alert, if you haven't read the story yet, or if you haven't read the yearbook, Bob Wigger's dad passed when Bob was 4. So he was raised almost entirely by his mother, and his high school football coach actually inspired him to seek out coaching, because he just wanted to be like him so much. So I mean, and I see it. I've got nieces and nephews. My brother's a college baseball coach. He helps coach t-ball or softball pitch and everything like that. And you see some of the parents, especially at that age, like you like a little bit of fire. You like, boosting up, but at the same time, it's like, accountability accounts for a lot. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There has to be some accountability.
Yeah.
Not everybody is gonna play in the pros.
Not everybody
most of them
will.
is not going to make it to college, right? And so most of them aren't even going to make their high school team. They're not as great as you think they are, but that doesn't detract from the need to hold them accountable, make them better.
Right.
When Wyatt played with one of my favorite kids I'd ever coached, and I'd coached some talented kids, and he wasn't by far the most talented on the team. He was never going to pitch, and but he enjoyed being there.
Absolutely.
And he always gave me 100% effort and a great attitude. And those are like my only 2 requirements.
Okay. Yeah.
Maximum effort and a good attitude.
Yeah.
The rest of it we can work with, right? You had a bad day and you're feeling off today. We can work through all of that, and I can teach you how to do what you need to do. But I always just tell them, the only 2 things that you are 100% in control of is your effort and your attitude.
Absolutely. 100%. I preach that all the time to all of my athletes. And, going back to, you making a comment of, the ones that are least apt to be able to deal with pressure because they grew up in a single-parent home. I grew up in a single-parent home. And I think that lit my fire.
Yeah.
It really did. And to be completely honest with you, it was kind of fun seeing my sperm donor, watch me become who I was becoming when I was in high school. Because I would hear from different people that he was starting to tell people that I was his son. And my response was, I didn't have a dad. I didn't. He was never around, and for whatever reason or whatever, like, there is nothing on this planet except for death that can keep me away from my kids. So that's always been a thing to me. And I also think that, because you grow up in a single parent home, whether if it, being males. Like, I have 2 older brothers, and they were tough as hell on me, right?
Yeah.
Like,
They usually are.
and to be honest with you, there's been times to where, you know, I've done other interviews, and I give Ken and Cal all of the credit in the world, because had I not gotten my ass whooped by them as much as I did,
Right.
I would have never become who I was. It would have been very, very tough for me to become who I was if they weren't as hard on me as they were. Like, when I tell you, like, I got the living crap beat out of me,
Right.
like, there's no, like, ifs, ands, and buts about it. Now, that was tough love, right? You can't spread that the way that you can today. So I'm a firm believer that when people say, because I was grown in a single-parent home, I use that's an excuse. And I think that there are too many excuses that are being accepted by too many people that are in positions to where they can say, oh, well, because you have a single mom or a single dad that's at home that's raising this kid can't be successful. Well, what seems to be the problem? Is it the home, or is it these people from the outside that are sitting in these positions saying that this kid probably won't? Well, if you're bashing a kid's ego like that, or if you're continuing to give them crutches to lean on, what do you think they're going to do?
Right.
They already have excuses made up and why they're not going to be successful, instead of us letting everybody know that no matter where you're from, born and raised, North Omaha, East Omaha, West Omaha, it doesn't matter, South Omaha, it doesn't matter where you come from. It's about where you're getting your drive from, being able to find within, like, where you're at as a person, as a competitor, as what it is that you want to be. I was told at a very early age that no matter what you do in high school, like, if you're good enough at things, you don't have to talk about it. You mentioned this earlier. You don't have to talk about it because other people will talk about it for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't, yes, I do kind of stay to myself, for say. I don't go back to a lot of Nebraska football games. I don't feel like I need to. I think that time of my life was great. Met some really good friends. Met a brother in Lawrence. And, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, like the offensive linemen, those are my guys. Those
Right.
guys and I are, like, we're pretty close. And, when you have a common goal and you have, so many different lifestyles and how people come up, quit using things for excuses. The people at the top need to stop making excuses for why people can't be successful.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
really good.
Absolutely.
That's really. I'm gonna be chewing on that one for about a week, because there's a lot of good stuff right there. That's a lot of truth. A lot of really good truth. Now, you mentioned you don't show up to a lot of football games, and I know that's true because I know who I see on the sidelines every game. And but you came to the last one. You were at the spring game, and I turn around and damn, there's Clinton. And I turn around and take a picture, and I turn around. Where the hell did Clinton go?
I was going to say,
Son
and
of a
he's
bitch.
gone. He saw you with the camera and got up.
No, he's just like that. That's every time I run into him, it's just I turn around and there's Clinton. And then I turn around again and he's gone. He's like a stealth ghost. But anyways, I mentioned you had showed up to the spring game. You showed up for Frank.
Only.
Oh, and I get it.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Tell me just a little bit about. I asked you before we started recording what your thoughts were on it, and you hit it on the head, hit the nail on the head.
It was something that was long overdue. I left the university feeling some type of way. I did. I wasn't like all giddy about everything. I love the fact that I was on 2 national championship teams. I love the fact of a lot of the relationships that I built. I also feel like there were some things that happened that you see quite a bit of. You just never think that you would be a part of that. And I won't go into detail because, again, people know who they are
Right.
when things are mentioned, right? But Frank Solich was somebody that always kept it 100%. If he knew that you weren't going to play much, he would tell you, you're not going to play much this week. If he knew that you're going to get a certain amount of carries and it could be a bulk of what's going on in this game plan, he would tell you. And that's the thing that I loved about Frank. But even after playing days, I've always been able to call him. I've always been able to text him. He has always been there. There's a lot of people that say, yes, I'm always here for you. But I've always been able to call and talk to Coach Solich. And the time that he were at Ohio, I would text Coach Solich right after a football game, after I see him win. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but he had Ohio State on the ropes, had them beat. And I texted him. I was like, hey, good game. Like, Ohio State is, like, ranked super high at this time.
Right.
And he simply hits back, being frank, still lost. He wanted to win.
Yeah.
You know? And he's always been someone that, like, he responds. I mean, he responds every single time that I have texted that man. That man has responded, like, that day. It's not like a day later. It's not like 2 days later. Like, he's better at texting people back than I am. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that man, and he's all, and, you know, Coach Solich and I, we've had some conversations. And, you know, about some of my feelings and how, you know, when I left from Lincoln. And, you know, he's kind of that big uncle. I shouldn't call him big, but, you know, the uncle figure to where, like, he kept it real.
He plays bigger than he is.
He kept it real the whole time. And that was the whole thing, you know, which kind of, like, you know, helped soothe some of the bitterness from, you know, from when I did exit from down there. And, but again, I showed up because Frank Solich, when the same day that I found out that Solich was going to be down there, I told him, I will be there to see you. And he said, I look forward to it. I can't wait to see you, Clinton. That's exactly what the response is. I'll show you the, you know.
I know, totally believe it. There's,
you know, but it is.
He's just, I agree. It might, you know, I've had limited exposure to him over the years, but that has nothing about it has changed. I was remarking about when I was going through the pictures I shot of his little ceremony, he busted out in that big smile. And I was like, damn, that is the same smile from 25 years
Absolutely.
ago. Right? Nothing. I mean, maybe a couple extra wrinkles, but it is the same smile.
Yep.
That's the same guy I remember.
100%.
Oh, there's a reason why. Like, when he came back for, like, basically a week because his old players in Omaha wanted to see him, his old Lincoln Southeast, you know, from his high school days. And then they had a separate Husker event. Like, and now they're naming the new locker room after him. Like, there's a reason for that, is because his connection with players and just the tether you have to, it's another thing that's almost unique with sports and coaching, is like that bond that you can form with multiple people bypassing generations. Yeah. Like, it's remarkable. But if you've met Frank and you've talked with him for a lot, it's not that remarkable. He's
you can't help but like him. I remember. I will never forget the day I met Frank, and I've told you the story. I don't know if I had told you the story or not, but he was up at Bryan looking at a couple of my linemen at the time, and they must have been in coach's office watching film. Comes walking out, and I just happened to be walking in the locker room. He walks up, shakes my hand, and says, "If you were 3 inches taller and 15 pounds heavier, I'd offer you right now."
Yeah. Again, keeping it real.
like instantly real. Just like, hi, I just met you, young man. Boom, real. I'm like,
yeah, man.
I spent the next week cussing my parents out.
He's
my
like
entire
that,
genetic code.
He's
right?
like that.
It's like, man, you couldn't have just given me 4 inches. I could have found the 15 or 20 pounds. That would have been easy.
He's like that.
But yeah.
But that was the reason. Yeah. You know, and it's really good to see that, you know, because we got a chance to, Toby Wright and I were kind of standing on the sideline, and we were talking to Trev. And, you know, Trev was like, to be honest with you, like, Rule is the one that reached out and he said that he wanted to do something. And it just makes you think back to, like, everybody that's been there as a head football coach. Since Solich has been gone, nobody thought to bring that man back to honor him and to do anything.
Well, it from my perspective, and we've talked about this, that it's all part of what I'm calling Trev Albert's redemption tour. Mm-hmm. Like it seems to me he's doing all of the things to right all of the wrongs over the last one, and that the Frank Solich thing I think was the most glaring one, right? Because the way that all went down and the way he got kicked out the door by the administration at the time was just it. I don't know if it's the Frank Solich curse or what, but it was long overdue. And that entire week, like you talked about, and DB has talked about it, it just felt like a cathartic cleansing that needed to happen. And like a lot of bad air we just kind of wiped it away by, you know what I mean? By just trying to at least like acknowledge and make things right as best you can.
That had to be done.
Yeah.
Like something like that for Solich, it had to be done. That was long
you're hard pressed to find anybody who has given more years and more blood to the university than him.
Absolutely.
I mean, he played, he coached. I mean, T.O. doesn't have the years at Nebraska that Frank did.
You better be careful mentioning that. There'll be people wanting your head for saying something like that about T.O.
Yeah. But it's the truth. T.O. went to Hastings College.
You're right.
Yeah. Right?
You're right.
Frank's got seniority as far as the number of years in that uniform.
Oh, yeah.
And it's worth noting the Matt Rule connection of, reaching out. They have that relationship from coaching with each other. And Matt Rule, of, seeing a lot of college coaches around, he's really good at like ingratiating the culture. I mean, he went to Baylor without even being from Texas and hired 3 Texas High School Coaches Association beloved members. And now Joey McGuire's coaching at Texas Tech. Wetzel, I think, is still in administration at Baylor. And then I can't remember where the other one is at. But he's really good at getting the culture bits. He's really good at understanding what people want.
He is exceptional at reading the room.
And this was a prime fruit, ripe on the picking, to go after. And it was an easy decision, but one that, people in Nebraska aren't going to take it easy by saying it was an easy decision. They're going to love it just as much, easy or difficult.
Well, he's still got to put up.
Yeah, for sure.
There's that. But,
for sure.
But he seems to be checking all the boxes.
Yeah,
he's undefeated in the games they've played so far.
There you go. Yeah.
But we've talked about it before too. That I think we as fan bases over the last, we'll go all the way back to Frank. After Frank, we had all these different kinds of coaches, right? That they checked some boxes, but they didn't check all the boxes. And so we as fans have assembled this checklist of all the things we'd love to see in a coach. Right. And nobody ever like checked all the boxes. And then Matt comes in and he just starts like doing things and saying things and doing things and recruiting and, the Frank thing and the getting the culture thing. And he just keeps checking off boxes, and everybody and I was one of them. I went into this coaching hire going, no, you're going to have to show me, don't tell me.
Yeah.
Right. I'm tired of jumping on the bandwagon and being disappointed. I said, nope. And God damn it, he just kept checking off boxes.
Oh.
Right. And I was like, damn it, I think I'm on the bandwagon because, granted, we all got to wait and we got to win some games.
Absolutely.
But
that's going to be the biggest boxes checked.
Oh yeah.
Regardless.
Absolutely.
Regardless.
But you got a coach that gets competition.
Yeah.
Right. His the Matt test. What did he call it? During the whole competition week.
Oh yeah, they had team competition week.
What was it? What did he call that?
They even into mat drills and then
drills. That's what I was trying to.
And then into like the final week of an off-season conditioning, they just like broke up and had the team themselves.
They just played games and competed
into like 12 different teams. They had their own draft, and then captains. They had points for accountability, getting people to class on time or getting to other Husker events and supporting other Husker athletic teams and all of that. Like if again, I went to school and we all convinced Zach Lee to chug a bottle of ketchup. He was third string quarterback, and he was chugging a bottle of ketchup because we told him he couldn't do it.
Yeah,
that's the kind of competition that it takes. You know what I mean? And I think it's when you see it, you know it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you hear a lot of rumblings about how pleased people are with that hire, and which is cool. Like that's great. At the end of the day, the big box is one. How many wins and losses? But one that seems to be that he's doing well and that he's done well other places that he's been and coached is, as you said, he's able to read the room. And if you can build relationships, if you can build people and make them want to buy into, like that's the big thing. You get these young kids to buy into, you can lead them just about anywhere that you want them to. And it seems like that's what he's doing. And that'll always be a big thing. Like if you don't get kids to buy in, kids are going to enter the transfer portal all the time.
Yeah, well,
which is a different.
We're not going to go there. We don't have the time to go down that road. But on that note, we're running up against time here, so I think we'll end it on the just win games.
Just win games.
Just win games, and it all takes care of itself. So we'll end it there. I'm Eric. This is Brady. Thanks, Clinton, for coming in. That was a great discussion. Don't forget to click subscribe and the notifications bell and all that stuff if you care to come back and hear what we got to talk about. To that end, this was the eye test. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.